Welcome back, my Psychians. This is our last video for this video lecture series. All right, stress and health. Let's go over it, shall we? Who knows about stress? So, what the heck is stress, my friends? Well, let me tell you. Psychology states that it's a psychological state that causes physical illness, and it could be stress is any circumstance that may be real or perceived and threatens one's well-being. So again, remember, really listen to the way it was worded. Stress is any circumstance that may be real or perceived. So say that Sally is a straight A student. She never gets nervous for tests and she never gets stressed with tests, while Bob gets extremely nervous for tests, even though the teachers may be thinking, oh, why is he so stressed, right? But it's perceived, right? The way that you perceive your stress. And when severe stress is felt and it's prolonged, it starts to affect our ability to cope with it. And our body also responds in a way to stress as well. So we have stressors and stress. Stressors and stress. So stressor is a stressful stimulus. So for example, Bob's parents just got divorced and he's starting to act out in class. The stressor for Bob was the divorce. It's a thing. It's a condition that is demanding people to adapt. A stressor. For anyone who watches Criminal Minds, they talk about stressors all the time. And then we have stress, which is our reaction, right? So the physical and mental change that occur in our response to a threatening situation, right? Or a challenging situation. So our stressor is the thing that creates the reaction of stress, okay? So when we think about stress, there's pretty much like a 4-component response, right? So there is our cognitive appraisal where we identify the threat and determine how we will cope. It's different for everyone. So for example, Sally has a very stressful job interview in a week. And so maybe her cognitive appraisal will be like, okay, do I have the tools to deal with this stress next week? Should I prepare? Should I not prepare before, right? So she's going to appraise how stressed she is. She's going to measure how stressed in her mind. So she's going to say like, ooh, like, when you ever say like, I'm like 1 out of 10, how stressed you are. Same thing with cognitive appraisal, but it's different for everyone, right? Everyone's level is different of stress. We have our physiological response, which is our body's reaction. So usually when we're stressed, we have higher body temperatures. We tend to sweat a lot more. Our pupils dilate. If it's prolonged stress, we'll start to get sick. Our immune system will be lowered. There's also, when it comes to stress, subjective feelings that also play a role, like emotions play a role in stress. Usually you can tell if someone's stressed if their emotions are off or maybe heightened. And then there's also the behavior, actions taken because of the stress, right? Sometimes, a stressor could cause someone to start depending on drugs, right? Or start making a connection to, so say that Bob is super stressed and he starts to smoke a cigarette every time he's stressed, right? And he starts to classically, right? We have the conditioning of connecting to stimuli. So if he's stressed, he craves a cigarette, right? So we see how these behaviors start to form either good or bad due to stressful situations, right? A stressor. So stress and stressors. So just like we kind of talked about, stress is not merely a stimulus or a response. It is a process by which we appraise, so thinking about how stressed we are, and then how we are going to cope with our environmental challenges. So it's a response, and it's almost like a cycle. I actually am reading a stress book right now. It's called Burnout, and Keeble, our teacher friend, is one who suggested it, but it talks about like a stress cycle and how it's always a cycle. It never stops and goes. You have to kind of work through it, right? And so we have our stressful event, right? Tough math test. Let's cognitively appraise it. Okay, is it a threat or is it a challenge? Like, do we think that, yikes, I can't do this, or I've got this, I just got to work for it, right? And this is where mindset also comes up. And then we have our reaction, stress to distraction, aroused and focused. So when stress is short-lived, or taken as a challenge, stressors can be a positive effect. So it is natural and normal for us to have stress, but also some people embrace stress. Some people one of my students and my past students says that he lives in stress. He lives on stress. He thrives on stress. Like that's what gets him, it gets his act together. But however, prolonged stress can slowly degrade your body. So there's a difference between normal stress, which stress is usually supposed to be a quick thing. So acute stress is supposed to be quick. It's supposed to be a quick action. When it is prolonged, that is when our body starts to really hurt. When we're stressed for days at a time or weeks or months at a time. So types of stressors, there's a couple. So I believe there's 2 slides for this. So type 1, we have catastrophic events. The Sonoma County fires, huge stressor, right? A sudden and unexpected potential life-threatening experience. To this day, I have a flashbulb memory of me getting woken up at 2:16 in the morning for the Tubbs fire 3 years ago, or almost 4 years ago. There'll be 4 years this October. Not, I guess, so it's mostly 3 years, but it's, especially catastrophic events that we have no control over, right? Another type of stressor could be life changes or strains, life circumstances that create demands to which people adjust. So maybe dealing with a parent that just got divorced, right? That's a huge stressor on a child's life, right? Along with the adults. And that was just for in class, but we also have chronic stressors, so those that continue over a long period of time. So for example, a chronic stressor could be you taking your finals every year, right? It's just kind of over a period of time, right? Chronic. So it continues over a long period of time. But also there's the regular daily hassles, irritation, pressures and annoyance that might be, might start adding up. Maybe you got stuck in traffic this morning, right? Maybe you had a fight with your significant other, right? So there's daily hassles of life that lead us stressed, right? What about you waking up the morning that you didn't realize an assignment was due, right? So again, daily hassles that come with life, right? So moving on to kind of this appraisal model of stress that Lazarus kind of came up with, right? He stated that whether we experience stress depends on our cognitive appraisal of the event and the resources we have to deal with it. So again, cognitive appraisal means us thinking, can we handle this, right? So we're kind of measuring how stressed we are. And do we have the resources to feel better? Do we have resources to change what we need to change? So for example, you don't have to write down what this will show, but we have an event, car won't start, I'll miss class. So let's think about the appraisal. So you would think to yourself, do I have the resources to cope with this event? Could it be you have a AAA card, or you have a friend that's going to school that can pick you up, right? Anything that you can think of. And then you're going to go 2 directions. You're either going to say, yes, I can take the bus, I can get to campus, I can still make it on time, or no, it's impossible, I will never make it to class now, which I have a final in, right? 2 different ways, and there's 2 different outcomes, right? 2 different outcomes. So again, that right side leads to stress. We're going to reappraise. So are my coping efforts working on this end? And yes, you're on your way. No, I missed the late bus to campus. So again, it's all about the appraisal and then thinking, do you have the resources to help yourself? Do you have the resources to fix what is in your way, or the stressor, okay? So this is going to be kind of like a little bit of a big little slide, and I'll have to, we're going to spend a little time on it, but there's 2 pathways of stress. Or should I say there's 2 pathways there's 2 pathways of 2 different types of stress. So we have acute stress, which is short-lived, short-term, and it's healthy. We then have prolonged stress, which is long-term and it's not healthy. So we're going to look at how our body reacts to acute stress versus prolonged stress. So first with acute, and I'm sorry if it's a little cut off at the end. I'll help you guys tell you what it is. Our acute stress is where we usually find our fight or flight response, right? So Sally sees a bear. Our bodies are only meant to experience stress and what it does to our body for short periods of time. Then we're supposed to feel better once we're safe, right? So, when we talk about fight or flight, it's the rapidly occurring chain of internal physical reactions that prepare people to either, fight or flight and to take immediate action to the threat, right? To take immediate action to the threat. That's what it says at the very bottom right here. So acute stress, right next to it, right, fight or flight. And this is all normal and it's healthy to have stress. So let's see how the body kind of works through it. So acute stress starts at the hypothalamus, which is what our janitor is in charge of, right? Our hypothalamus. It then will trigger to our sympathetic nervous system, which is in control of our adrenal gland, right? And our medulla, which is also why our heart rate goes up when we're stressed. And so this is what kind of happens when we're stressed, right? So there is an increase of respiration. So our heart, like our breathing gets heavier, our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up. There's increased blood flow to our muscles. Digestion slows down, right? So our pupils dilate. We're ready for fight or flight. Totally normal, totally fine. This is a regular stress cycle, right? Let's talk about our prolonged stress. So I'm going to move my little picture away so you guys can see it. So we're going to learn about Salil in just a little bit, but he found that prolonged stress causes the release of corticosteroids, which have benefits in the short term that can cause harm in the long term. So stress in general is better for short term, really bad for long term. So let's see how our body kind of processes it differently. It starts at the hypothalamus. That's great. But this is where it goes different. After a long time of having this stress, it will slowly start to go towards our pituitary. Our pituitary is in charge of growth and our hormones. So if anyone's stressed for a super long period of time, some people might start to develop acne, right? Because it messes with our hormones. Some people might gain weight, right? Because again, if our hormones are involved, it starts to create an imbalance. We have the ACH, which is released, which is also connected to our adrenal. So our adrenaline is also still being secreted, but it's being secreted all the time, constantly, right? Constantly. So let me move my little camera, but it increases the release of stored energy, but also it increases inflammation and it reduces our immune system response. And some other things that you could go through either weight gain or weight loss. You could have really bad, you could be having a hard time controlling your hormones. You could be more moody. You could be more, usually people get sick, our immune systems get weakened because our body's in such a fight or flight mode, right? That I can't take care of the rest of us, right? So again, 2 different pathways, 2 different types of stress, okay? So now that we're switching off from that, we also have something that's called GAS, or General Adaption Syndrome. And this is by the same guy, according to Selly. I want to say it's Selly. I might be saying it wrong, but you guys will forgive me. He believes that the stress response is essentially, our stress response goes through 3 phases. We have alarm, resistance, and then exhaustion. And this is over time. And so our next couple of slides will go into each step in detail. So we have the alarm stage, which, is our fight or flight. It's our initial reaction, releasing our neurotransmitters, our hormones to deal with the stressful situation. Sally saw a bear. Now we need to do something about it, right? If a stressor persists over a long period of time, the initial adaptive reaction can become distress, and it depletes the body's energy and defense resources. So if we're stuck in the alarm stage, high blood pressure problems can start happening, deterioration of our immune system, fatty deposits in our blood cells. We can start to have ulcers start showing up, right? It really does kind of all build up to it builds up, right? So again, stress builds up, and this is all it doesn't immediately happen, but this all happens over time. So we have the second stage, which is resistance, right? if a stressor persists but not so strong that it overwhelms us, the individual starts to rebound during stage 2. So it's almost like you want to like fight, right? So outwardly, the body appears to be gaining an advantage, resisting the stressor, inwardly trying to restore your homeostasis. So your body is still working through coping through the stressor, but you might have a plan set up where you have the resources for your stressor. So this is where you're going to start seeing the resistance phase, where you're like, okay, like I have the things that I can get through this, right? And then it leads us to our exhaustion phase. Being stressed leaves people exhausted. Who knew, right? Who knew? So if stage 3, so we have exhaustion, and if resistance fails to relieve stress, the symptoms of alarm reappear and it starts all over again. So people get stuck in this stress cycle, right? So this time it accompanies by even more powerful autonomic nervous system responses, and it essentially, if the stressor is not removed, we still exhaustion. So that's why people who are stressed all the time are always tired, right? Usually there are warning signs of exhaustion, like people who have heart attacks, clogged arteries, excessive colds and flus, right? Frequent headaches. Our body tells us when something is wrong, right? And again, if the relief of stress is not met, the cycle will start over again, right? And so again, the stress cycle. So, and for this one, you don't have to write anything down. I just kind of want to talk about it. But stress can have a variety of health-related consequences, just kind of like we talked about. Persistent stressors and negative emotions could lead to unhealthy behaviors of picking up, smoking, drinking, poor nutrition, poor sleep. But the release of the stress hormone can also trigger, long-term, it can lead to heart disease, immune suppression, and autonomic nervous system effects like headaches and hypertension. So again, please take care of your bodies. You guys need to be able to, we need to be able to find our resources, be able to hopefully adapt, right? And start to finish off our stress cycles. So real quick, okay. I'm so sorry. Let me try to fix what is going on this one. Did I click? Oh, okay. I just clicked too much. I clicked one ahead. So just thinking about, and we're going to go into personality a lot in our Unit 7, Part 2. That is our personality section. But there is a connection with personality types of Type A and Type B and our stressors. So Type A personality, and you guys can think about whoever this connects to. You could even see which one you're more like. You're not one or the other usually. You're usually a mix of both, but one tends to be the dominant one. So Type A personality, these people tend to be competitive, hard-driven, impatient, prone to anger and hostility. Essentially, it's your parent who says, do this because I said so. They are the boss. They are it. They need to have control. It's their way or the highway, right? Type B personality, easygoing, relaxed. When I think of my own family, me and my dad are the Type Bs, and my mother and my brother are Type A to the max, and we balance each other out. But there is some links to, they say that you will live longer if you're more easygoing and more relaxed. So Type A actually tends to have more stress problems later on, right? And so what they say, and I don't know why this one's not going away. I apologize, my people. I'm going to see what I can do about that later. But again, Type A versus Type B, they find that, people who are more optimistic tend to live longer than people who are more pessimistic. Fun fact, mindset plays a role in how long you live. I apologize for that little mix-up. Okay, hold on, let me pause real quick and figure out how this can show up. All right, it looks like I'm back. Okay, so some things, sorry about the initial craziness. So hold on, still having a little problem. Just give me a second. All right, my people, I'm back. Sorry for the little craziness. And also, I am not skilled enough to go back and clip that out. So you guys are gonna just have to look at all my boo-boos as I talk, just like a real classroom. So just kind of like I was saying, this is a slide I was looking for. The people, again, with a more optimistic, explanation style. So essentially people who look at the silver lining of things, people who always look at the light at the end of the tunnel, they tend to also do the same thing with stress. So they're able to cope better with stressful events and have better moods and have a stronger immune system over people who tend to be more pessimistic. So, something to think about. And again, so just going over gender with coping, kind of thinking about all these like nurture factors, right, or environmental factors. Our nervous system responses in men and women are the same, but our behavioral responses differ. So even though, we're all human, our responses tend to differ, female versus male. So close social relationships predict health and lower risk of premature death for both men and women, but we both have different types of kind of like circles. So while, males, when they tend to, get confronted with a stressor, they tend to either withdraw socially or behave aggressively. If you've ever heard of boys like just duking it out and like punching someone and like all of a sudden they're all fine again, right? Versus, and again, these are just correlations, not cause and causation, right? Not saying that all males do this and all females do this, right? But there is strong correlations. And females' responses to stress, usually they are to act in a nurturing way or seek out social groups like their friends. So so for me, whenever me and my friends were stressed, we would all come together and just like have one big like vent session, right? But we come together for support. So that's very interesting. And just some things before we end our lecture is, just some things to minimize stress. I hope you write down at least 3 of these bullet points. Okay, so aerobic exercise. So exercise in general floods our brain with happy chemicals. Our drug lord brain is super excited when it gets some endorphins in it. Relaxed meditation, writing in your journal, avoidance of stimulants, because stimulants get your mind and your blood pressure already up, and that's what stress does to you in general. So getting adequate sleep, social involvement, connection, and support. When it says eat live foods, that's what your book says, but essentially it just like means like, foods that are healthy for you. And then gaining a sense of control. You cannot control the environment, but you can control your thoughts, right? You can try to get your brain ready and able to get ready to cope. So we'll talk about this more in class. That is it for my last little video. You guys are awesome, and now you guys can turn in your assignment.